How you doing, guys? Big Mate Dan School here again today, back once again with another Conquest video for you. Today, it's issue 13. So, issue 13 of Conquest, fantastic. What's this here? Terrain. I do love a bit of terrain. If you like terrain yourself, make sure you check out Old Average Brick Gaming. I'll pop a link up to his channel here. And he's done a month just of terrain. It was Terrain-tober, and did a load of videos based around terrain and how he's sprucing up some of his old terrain, unboxings of new terrain kits, things like that. So check out his channel for sure. Back to Conquest. Let's have a look, see what's inside. So we've got red, blue, and green. Where's the yellow? We're missing a yellow section. Very strange. I'll tell you what that means later in this episode. So, firstly, Honor of Ultramar gives you some fluff based around the strike cruiser of the Ultramarines, Honor of Ultramar. Tells you the background of the ship itself and some of the battles it's fought in, which is good stuff. As you know, I like my fluff, so it keeps it interesting for me. And then it introduces us to the warp. So the warp and the way the Imperium of Man uses warp space to travel great distances across the galaxy, colonize space, and recapture space. And then it talks a little bit about the Astronomicon, which is the Emperor's divine light that guides the spaceships of the Imperium through the galaxy, and navigators as well. It gives us a hint of rogue traders here without actually saying it's a rogue trader. It just says it's an agent of the Imperium. And it talks about STC systems as well. STC systems, what are they? An STC system is a machine that builds a specific machine. You put some blueprints into it and it produces this machine for you. It tells you where on the planet you can get the raw materials from, where on the planet that you're on. So these things, when mankind was spreading throughout the galaxy, these things were vital to take onto a colonization ship and to a new planet. And what they'd do, they'd set up the machine, it'd tell them where to get the raw materials, it'd tell them how to build what they need to survive. So whether that's hab blocks or farming equipment or whatever, it'd tell them how to do all that. But during the Age of Strife, all of these machines were lost to mankind. But luckily, some people have made copies of the blueprints that the STC systems produced, or that you use with the STC systems. So the standard template constructs, that's what STC stands for. So basically the Mechanicum and the Imperium now have blueprints that they can use to build certain machines, but a lot of the blueprints have been lost as well. So the Imperium's kind of at a standstill in terms of technology, so there's not much advancement of technology. So then it talks a little bit about the Mechanicum and how they expand throughout the galaxy, setting up forge worlds and greedily grabbing the STC blueprints and taking them for themselves so that they can produce, they can be the sole source or the main source of the STC designed machines and vehicles in their sector. Onto the armoured container how to build section. Gives you a nice big picture there of the sprue. I've not shown you the sprue. Here we go, here's the sprue. Hey, it's a big one. It's as big as the magazine. When I went into the shop today, I said, "Has issue 13 coming of Conquest?" She knew what I wanted straight away. I didn't even have to say Conquest. And she was looking under the till. She couldn't find it. It's because this was covering it. The sprue was covering the magazine, so she couldn't see what it was. And she just held it up to me, sprue side out, and I was like, yeah, that's the one. Because I knew what to expect in it this week. Anyway, so how to build. They give you some handy tips here, saying use elastic bands to hold it in position, so you don't have to sit there holding it while the glue dries. The armoured containers are tricky to build. They're not the hardest thing in the world to build, but they're a little bit tricky, I'd say. I've built 3 myself in the past. Now these come in a 3-pack from Games Workshop, and I can't for the life of me remember the price of the 3-pack. I think it's £25. What I'll do, I'll put, if it's not £25, I'll put the actual price here now. Bung. Okay, so now you know the price. Let's talk about value of this issue. Well, I'm only going to be working off the basis that this is £25 for 3 of these sprues. So, £25, the magazine is £8. 8 times 3 is 24, or just shy of £8. 8 times 3 is 24. So, over each issue, you're saving yourself about 33p. That's one of the lowest value issues we've had so far. However, one thing I will say is, you do need terrain. I love terrain. And you need terrain to play 40k. As we get closer to playing with the full rules of the game, hint for what's coming later in the issue, you'll need terrain to improve your games, to make them a bit more varied and stuff. So this, in my opinion, although it's not the best value issue, it's a great issue. We've finally got a bit of terrain, and we can go forward from there. So yeah, it's 4 pages of how to build. Very nice. Wait a minute, we're straight onto the tutorial mission here. Where's the how to paint section? Well, here's a theory for you. The next issue, we're going to see the large dry brush rather, and a base player Mechanicus Standard Grey. I've got a feeling they're going to tell us to paint the container in grey. So I think that's why maybe they should have released those in a different order. But they're probably going to tell us to paint it something like this. Because we could paint it exactly like this, because we've got the McCrag Blue and we've got the Mechanicus Standard Grey. So, we may paint it like that, we may not. It may be painted green, it may be painted whatever colour they tell you to paint it. So the dangerous cargo is the mission in this one.
With both forces running low on ammunition, the Munitorum armoured containers on the cargo deck of the Honour of Ultramar have become prime targets. The Death Guard intend to get the weapons cache before the Ultramarines can retrieve the much-needed ammunition. The Ultramarines have deployed a force of Primaris Space Marines under Lieutenant Calcius to ensure this precious resource is distributed to the Ultramarines forces, rather than falling into the hands of their Death Guard enemies. If the ammunition is not secured, the Ultramarines aboard the Honour of Ultramar will be hard-pressed to maintain their defence.
So, it's setting the scene as it always does, and then it tells you what you'll need. Set up your play mat. The Death Guard player will need 5 Plague Marines and 12 Poxwalkers. Space Marine player will need 3 Reavers, 3 Intercessors, Lieutenant Calcius. Roll to see who deploys first, and then deploy your units in turns. Tells you the deployment rules, and roll to see who takes first turn. So a lot of the previous issues of the magazine have told us a specific side goes first. I think that's to weigh it in favour, because some of the previous missions have been a little bit unbalanced, I'd say. But it's to give them a little bit, to sort of level the playing field to a certain extent, I'd say. So this one, it's saying roll to see who goes first, which gets us closer to the fuller rules of 40k, because that's what you're supposed to do in that. This also gets us closer to the full rules of 40k. It even says it here. It uses the term full rules. In this section are data sheets for some of your units from the full rules of Warhammer 40,000, though they are simplified slightly. These data sheets replace the rules from tutorial and replay articles. Fantastic stuff. So we're getting data sheets, as it says. In this issue, we've got the data sheets for all the units that are used in the tutorial mission in this. So we've got the Intercessor Squad, Reaver Squad, Lieutenant Calcius, Calcius, I was going to say Cassius then. And then the Plague Marines for the Death Guard and the Poxwalkers. Also, later on in the issue, it says in the replay rules, it's got the rules for using Storm Bolters on the armoured containers, which handily explains to us why Poxwalkers have a ballistic skill. It's 6+, but they don't have any shooting weapons. And they've got a ballistic skill of 6+ so that they can interact with terrain pieces that have weapons mounted on them. I'm not going to go into great detail about the rules of the various data sheets. It just puts a few things in there, like in the abilities sections. So for the Reaver Squad, it's got Terror Troops. Enemy units must subtract 1 from their leadership if they are within 3 inches of any Reaver Squad. So the Death Guard will have to subtract 1 when the Reaver Squad are close by, within 3 inches. And it's got the tactical precision rule for Lieutenant Calcius we've seen in the replay missions and the extra rules at the back of previous issues. And then in the Plague Marines datasheet, an interesting one is Death to the False Emperor. For each hit roll of a 6 this model makes in the fight phase, it can immediately make another attack against the same unit using the same weapon. These attacks cannot earn more extra attacks. Interestingly, in there, it doesn't say with keyword Imperium, which in the full rules it would say. I assume it's because with this magazine you're only going to be facing Space Marines. You're not going to be facing Eldar or Orcs or anything like that. But it would be nice if they said anyone with the keyword Imperium, because then it'd clear it up, and I wouldn't then come to play a Death Guard player who's learnt the game through the magazine. I wouldn't then come to play them and them think they get an extra attack against me if they roll a 6 in close combat, because they don't. It's only against Imperium opponents that they'd get that. But you know, that's maybe a slight oversight, or just like they said, it's a simplification. It's a simplified version of the datasheet from the full rules of 40k. And then on to battlefield terrain, and it tells us how we interact with battlefield terrain, so you can move onto it and over it. In this example, the Space Marine is an inch away from the terrain, so they move an inch towards it to get into base contact. They move 2 inches up because it's 2 inches tall, and then they can move up to 3 inches further onto the terrain because they've got 6 inches of movement overall, and you just subtract the vertical movement from your horizontal movement. It tells us about line of sight as well. Explains it quite nicely on the thing below, on the diagram, I guess you'd say, or the pictures below. And then charging and fighting within terrain. I think this section's quite handy because it says you can only charge these guys if you can get your models on top. Also, though, it explains wobbling model syndrome at the bottom here. So they're saying the players agree to let this Poxwalker fight in close combat because it can get up there, it just might fall off. So you don't want your model to fall off, land on the battlefield head first and chip all the paint off its face or something like that. So it's explaining the sort of etiquette that gamers have, where as long as they both gamers agree that that model can fight in combat, you can actually place it down on the battlefield, and then you treat it as if it's up there basically. And so then in the next movement phase, if it survived, it could fall back, but it'd have to fall back from that position up there, so then you subtract the extra 2 inches of movement and things like that. You just have to agree with your opponent where the model is and treat it for all gaming purposes as if it is there. And then it goes on to set up the scenario for us again for you to play through. And it gives you the victory conditions. How to win. This game lasts for 5 battle rounds. Either player can win by eliminating the enemy or having more models than the enemy within 3 inches of the objective marker at the end of the game. There we go. And then, like I said earlier, replay extra rules. Munitorum armoured containers. It's got cover saving here, which is interesting. I've said the storm bolters already, so I'll explain that slightly before I go on to the cover save. So strength 4, 2 shots, range 24, 4 shots at half range and 1 damage. So you could have Poxwalkers on the armoured containers getting 8 extra shots for you if you're the Death Guard player. Yes, they only hit on 6s, but that's not bad at all. And then the cover save bonus. When all models in a unit are obscured by terrain, they gain +1 to their save when being shot at. If unsure, stoop down and get a look from behind the shooting model to see if the models are obscured from view. So it's explaining to us there true line of sight as opposed to this imaginary line of sight that we've been playing with up until now. The only thing is, the cover save bonus here, that's, as far as I'm aware, that's slightly different to how you get a cover save in 40k. So unless it's in chapter approved book from 2017, unless it's in that or it's been in some FAQ or something and I've missed it, the only way you can get a cover save in the full 40k game is if you have a squad or a unit within some ruins, and all of the squad or unit are within the ruins, so you don't get a cover save if you're behind the ruins. You have to be within them. And obviously we've got no ruins in this scenario because we've just got an armoured container. So maybe they're just replacing the ruins with the armoured container and saying if it's behind it rather than if it's within it, if the unit's behind it rather than within. But it's just that could confuse matters further down the line, but correct me if I'm wrong there, and if they have put it in chapter approved, or if I've missed something in the expanded rules perhaps, because I've not read all the way through the expanded rules and the match play rules and everything like that. So just correct me if I'm wrong there, and that would be fantastic. Anyway, onto the back page. Like I've said already, we're getting the large dry brush in the next issue and the Mechanicus standard grey paint. After that, we're getting another Death Guard character. Whew. In this case, it's the Biologist Putrefier. He's got a load of grenades and stuff, and this character, I've read through his rules in Kill Team, and he is not quite as good as the Foul Blightspawn. Yeah, so the Foul Blightspawn seems like a slightly better character. However, there could be some aura effects with the Biologist Putrefier that makes him good. Oh, and you're getting 6 more dice in that issue as well. It's always good to get more dice. I know some people think these dice aren't great, but although they're not the highest quality dice, it's more about getting the dice to the people who need them, in my opinion. And yeah, that's it. That's all I've got for you. So, good issue, in my opinion, despite the fact that it's not the highest value issue. If I'm right in thinking the armoured containers are £25 for 3 from Games Workshop directly, then you're only saving yourself about 34p per issue. So, not the highest value issue, but terrain is an important feature in 40k. So, for me, that makes this, the lack of value in here, deceptive. I think there's more value in here than in some of the other issues we've had. Anyway, that's all you've got from me for today. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.